Everyone thinks spiritual correction means becoming a better person. Baal HaSulam says you've got it backward. In the early 1940s, Rav Yehuda Ashlag, known to Kabbalists as Baal HaSulam, sat in his modest Jerusalem study, writing letters to his students. These weren't casual notes. They were precise, demanding teachings about the nature of human desire and how we actually change. And in letter 4 of his correspondence, he addresses something most of us get fundamentally wrong about what it means to improve ourselves. The letter opens with a question that sounds simple but carries enormous weight. What is the actual obstacle between us and spiritual awakening? Most people assume it's ignorance, we just don't know enough, or weakness, we lack the strength to be good. Baal HaSulam rejects both answers. He points instead to something far more radical, the nature of our desire itself. Here's the pivot. He argues that every human being is born with what he calls a receiving desire, an impulse to take, to acquire, to benefit ourselves. This isn't a flaw that happened by accident. It's the fundamental structure of human consciousness. Without it, we wouldn't eat, wouldn't protect ourselves, wouldn't survive. But here's what nobody wants to hear. That same desire is also what makes us lie, hurt others, and feel eternally empty. So what does correction actually mean in this framework? It doesn't mean crushing your desires. Baal HaSulam is explicit about this. Correction means redirecting them, not wanting less, wanting differently. The desire stays. The object of desire transforms. Think of it this way. Right now, your desire is aimed inward at your own pleasure, your own status, your own safety. The entire mechanism of that desire is intact. But imagine if that same fierce, powerful impulse could be redirected outward, toward the well-being of others, toward connection, toward the fabric of creation itself. That's not self-denial, that's alchemy. But here's where Baal HaSulam gets specific and uncomfortable. He writes that this redirection cannot happen through willpower alone. You cannot think yourself into it. You cannot white-knuckle your way into loving your neighbor as yourself. The ego is too clever for that. It will simply disguise self-interest as altruism, and you'll never know the difference. So what's the actual mechanism? Baal HaSulam points to something he calls the environment. The people around you, the teachings you absorb, the collective consciousness you're embedded in, these aren't background noise. They are the primary tool of transformation. You become what your environment reflects back to you. This is why he emphasizes community so heavily, not as a nice social benefit, but as the actual mechanism of change. When you're surrounded by people who are genuinely attempting to shift their desire away from self-benefit toward mutual benefit, something happens. It's not peer pressure, it's resonance. You begin to absorb a different intention, a different measure of value. But Baal HaSulam also makes clear, and this is crucial, that the environment itself is just the vessel. The actual force of change comes from what he calls the upper force, or the light. It's the quality of connection, of unity, of the fundamental interdependence of all existence. When you're in an environment genuinely oriented toward that unity, you become permeable to it. Notice what he's not saying. He's not saying you're broken and need to be fixed. He's not saying your desires are evil. He's not saying you need to achieve some impossible state of perfection. He's describing a process, a natural unfolding that becomes possible when the conditions are right. The letter also addresses the question of free will, something that haunts every spiritual seeker. If the environment shapes me and the upper force changes me, where is my choice? Baal HaSulam's answer is elegant. Your freedom lies entirely in choosing your environment. You can't force the transformation, but you can place yourself in conditions where it becomes possible. This is why he emphasizes so heavily that a genuine seeker must find a proper group and a proper teacher, not for moral judgment or spiritual authority, but because the right environment is the only reliable tool we actually have. It's the only thing that can gradually rewire what we value, what we desire, what we consider real. And here's something that often gets missed in Kabbalah. Baal HaSulam is asterisk, not asterisk anti-desire. He's not calling for asceticism or renunciation. He's saying that desire is the raw material of consciousness itself. The question isn't whether you have it, you do, inherently. The question is what you're willing to let it be directed toward. In letter 4, he also touches on resistance, the inevitable pushback we feel when we try to genuinely shift our orientation. The ego doesn't like being reoriented. It will argue, justify, convince you that self-interest is actually enlightened self-interest. This isn't a sign you're doing it wrong. It's confirmation that something real is being asked of you. So when Baal HaSulam speaks of correction, he means this: a gradual, supported reorientation of your deepest desire away from self-benefit and toward connection with others and with the whole. Not through guilt or willpower, but through exposure to an environment and a teaching that reflects a different possibility back to you, moment after moment. This is radical because it flips the entire self-help narrative. You don't fix yourself. You don't achieve enlightenment through effort alone. Instead, you become willing to be changed by something larger than your own will. And that willingness, that simple openness to being shaped by genuine community and genuine teaching, is the only freedom that actually matters. What makes letter 4 so essential is that it strips away the fantasy of individual spiritual heroism. You're not climbing a mountain alone. You're not conquering your demons through sheer force of will. You're learning to swim in a current that's far larger than yourself, and that current only becomes visible when you're in the right place, with the right people, asking the right question. The letter ends with something deceptively simple, an invitation, not a command, not a guilt trip, an invitation to step into an environment where this transformation becomes possible. And that invitation is still open, still relevant, still waiting for anyone willing to ask the deepest question. Not how do I fix myself, but what am I willing to become? Subscribe to explore more of Baal HaSulam's teachings. Each letter unlocks a different layer of how real change actually happens.